Essentially what blockchain is a chain of transactions that is written on multiple computers at a time, so that if there is a change or an attempted change to the transaction at one computer, the other computers can reject it and say that is no longer a valid transaction. What that does is it increases dramatically the trust level in the transaction, because first of all, let's imagine that you are part of the blockchain, or your computer is part of the blockchain. What is stored on your computer is, first of all, subject to cryptography. So it's encrypted and it's highly secure to start with. But not only is it stored in an encrypted manner on your computer, it is stored on multiple other computers which are unknown to you. So if I was to hack into your computer, or you were to change a transaction on your computer, the other computers in the chain would object, and I'd know the transaction is not secure or has no integrity. And that's the essence of blockchain. You have all the transactions stored in distributed manner, encrypted, and therefore very, very difficult to hack. Most people that are believers in the technology will tell you it's hack-proof. And I think that largely it is, but I've long ago learned to avoid words like that are so absolute. So that's essentially what blockchain is. The essence of blockchain is generating trust in a transaction, right? That's the starting point. The minute you have that mental model, everything else cascades from that. So anything that requires trust and verification is now, let's assume, trusted. Documents, transactions, timestamps, certifying the authenticity of certain product, ensuring, delivering certificates, all of those trust-based transactions now become capable of being done on the blockchain. The key to that is that means that I no longer need an authority that certifies trust. So take, for example, in logistics, the letter of credit. Theoretically, the letter of credit can now be negotiated and settled between parties as long as there is a blockchain that certifies that a certain product was shipped. Let's imagine that there's a shirt leaving a factory in China, and the shirt has an embedded chip in it, RFID or some other intelligent chip. And that shirt is basically part of the Internet of Things, which means it has its own identity on the Internet. As it leaves the factory in China, it generates its own transaction. And that's written on the blockchain. Now that is highly secure, highly trusted, and for the reasons we talked about earlier, capable of being relied upon by other parties. So I can now pay you based on the fact that the shirt said, I have left the factory, right? Taking it very simple. Don't need a bank anymore for that letter of credit. Right? So that's the kind of disruption that is potentially possible through blockchain and logistics. Some of that might be banking transactions, some of it might be insurance transactions, some of it could be documents that allow me to deliver freight. You know, if I've got somebody coming in to pick up very high value product, branded product, perfumes or high cost, high value items, I might look to the blockchain to certify that you are entitled to pick up that freight, so that I don't release it to somebody else, because I know that you can't forge the document because the blockchain tells me that's a valid person and it's all digital. So Agility is the first forwarder in the world to participate with this, with the initiative that IBM and Maersk have launched to create transactions using the blockchain. Their initiative is called GTD Global Trade Digitization, but IBM and Maersk are thought leaders in the industry, and Agility made a decision to participate in that soon-to-be ecosystem, and is the first forwarder to participate in putting its transactions on blockchain, and then accessing those transactions from other parties that participate in this initiative. So Agility is a thought leader in that area, and the reason that Agility is doing this is because it gives us the opportunity to shape the conversation. Agility as a freight forwarder is providing early leadership, thought leadership into what events can go on blockchain, what events should be subscribed to, what events make sense for us to provide, and how do we participate and learn what it takes to actually hook the technologies up. Because we have some extensive systems of our own that today provide visibility and tracking to customers. But as customers talk to us about blockchain, we need to be able to talk intelligently about what this means. And the best way to do it is to have actually done it. So we have the credibility associated with it. Yeah, we've actually got a number of customers that have asked us for specific workshops, deep dive workshops, and we're now taking the opportunity to talk to customers and construct technology engagement workshops with a focus on blockchain, because there's a lot of misconception out there. And a lot of that misconception came about because it started with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And people don't understand that blockchain actually is an industrial strength platform, a lot of which it is open source, and it is available to use for a variety of other transactions. So the first thing people think about is the glamour of Bitcoin, and hopefully nobody lost money in that little blockchain application. But that's why there's a thirst for what does it mean for logistics, and that's the kind of answer that Agility is hoping to provide. The key to that is going to be whether or not an ecosystem forms around it. It's not the technology. The technology is a servant, right? We have to work out how best to cooperate around the industry, and that is shipping companies, other freight forwarders, and e-commerce providers, and airline carriers, and banks, insurance companies, technology providers. How are they going to create that ecosystem? Because without a critical mass, the risk is that we end up with too many technology providers trying to create their own ecosystem. We've learned that the technology interfacing is not necessarily as difficult as we thought it would be, provided that the organization has some technology strengths anyway. What we have learned is that for players in the industry that have not already invested in base technology platforms and the smarts, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to catch up, because first you have to have a system that traps events. Then you've got to have a system that has the ability to generate an API-based interaction. Now I know I'm getting technical, you told me not to, but you've got to have a certain base layer of technology, and you've got to have a certain base layer of technology people around to be able to take advantage of these new opportunities. So I think it's going to broaden, we've learned that it's going to broaden the gap between the digital haves and the digital have-nots in the industry. It's not technically as hard as we thought it would be, but it does take a lot of communication, and at the end of the day, it's going to take practices that allow people to collaborate to get momentum and get going quickly. I think that what the way we're going to see this play out is one of those, instant overnight successes that take 20 years to form, right? I think the way it's going to work is everybody runs forward, and then we're going to reach a tipping point at which 4 or 5 key players will have an ecosystem that everybody wants to join. So I think it's going to take a while, but then we're going to reach that tipping point, and all of a sudden it'll be like, why didn't we do this earlier? Right? So that's how I think it's going to be. There is potential for disruption, not only with the providers to the logistics industry, but also to the logistics industry itself, freight forwarding and so on, because what we have to work out is how best to add value to the technology. And I think that is still that's a blank canvas. Nobody knows that yet. And I think that's one of the reasons why Agility is participating is the sooner we look at it, the sooner we can understand where the technology is going, where the industry is going. And we can actually help steer that conversation.
Excellent. I think we got it, guys. Okay.